Bedford County and visitors both far and near. Gather round and listen to the great tidings I bear. Let joy be spread, and let it be known that on this day, the first day of May, in the year 2021, we welcome with humble duty all who hear this crier's call. This great county, with all its charms, welcomes you all with open arms. Pray ye all, proclaim both loud and clear a proclamation of invitation to gather near. The Bedford County Sesquicentennial celebration is about to begin. Ladies and gentlemen, may the Lord bless each and every one of us.
Greetings to all Bedford Countyans, both native daughters and native sons, and greetings to all adopted Bedford Countyans, all who may not have been fortunate to be born in Bedford County, but who have come to live here and call Bedford County your home. And lastly, greetings to all friends of Bedford County, all who reside here, or elsewhere rather, but feel at home when you breathe the fresh and invigorating air that permeates the hills and valleys and the towns and farmlands of this fine county. Would you all please join me in reciting the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Before I start in on to give you a short abbreviated history of the county, I would like to thank the Bedford County Commissioners and the Bedford Borough Council for enabling us to gather here today. I want to thank Kelly and the Chamber for providing the sound system. I want to thank Pastor Short of the Trinity Lutheran Church for organizing the tolling of the bells. I want to thank Paul Rowan and the Bedford Gazette for printing the historical and ethnic holiday articles that you've been seeing every weekend for the past while. And I want to thank members of the Sesquicentennial Celebrations Committee for their assistance, and I especially want to thank Bedford County Historical Society's President, Randy Hilligus, for serving as the town crier. And indeed, I want to thank God for giving us a very fine day to present this. Before I present a summary of Bedford County's 250-year history, I want to invite you all to visit, if you haven't already, the Sesquicentennial's website, which is bedford250.com. In addition to information on historical people, places, and events, the website includes a calendar of events taking place throughout the county during the Sesquicentennial year. You might consider getting out your colonial period clothing also to wear during the Sesquicentennial banquet in the fall. For now, make sure that you get a wood nickel and lapel pin as souvenirs to remember this milestone in the county's history. I am here today dressed as a gentleman of the 1770s, and I am channeling my fifth great-grandfather, William Proctor Jr. He was commissioned to serve as one of the Justices of the Peace who presided at the first General Court of Quarter Sessions of the Peace, held on 16 April 1771. William Proctor also served as Bedford County's first sheriff. His brother John Proctor would serve as the first sheriff in Westmoreland County when it was erected out of Bedford in 1773. William Proctor was one of three men commissioned to locate a tract of land and have a courthouse and jail built. They purchased lot number 16 on the northeast corner of the square and had two log structures built, a courthouse and a separate jail, which served the county's needs for 3 years until a more substantial stone structure could be built on the northwest corner. But William Proctor was not just a public servant, he also was a farmer. His farmstead was located to the east of where we are meeting today, midway between the village that would become Bedford Borough and the site of John Ray's trading post. The BB&T Bank stands on the site of William Proctor's farmstead. Although part of the borough today, William Proctor's farm would have been considered out in the country during his lifetime. I would like to think that as he looks over my shoulder during the ceremony, my ancestor is pleased with how the county has grown and thrived over 2.5 centuries. On 9th March 1771, the General Assembly of the Province of Pennsylvania signed an act that formally erected the county of Bedford out of Cumberland County. It would become the 9th county erected within the bounds of the Pennsylvania colony. Fort Bedford was the primary source of the name Bedford in this part of Pennsylvania frontier. It was named for John Russell, the 4th Duke of Bedford, and past historians have claimed that the name is bestowed on the fort on 13 August 1759 by General Stanwix, but Adam Hoops, a trader who supplied beef to the army, used the name almost a full year before, in December 1758. The name of Fort Bedford was apparently in common use around the fort if a livestock trader knew it. In regard to the fort, its construction had started in July 1758 and was mostly completed by that fall. Fort Bedford was part of the communication. The communication was the name given to a line of fortified supply depots built to furnish the Forbes expedition. That expedition was named for General John Forbes, although it was actually led by Colonel Henry Bouquet. Forbes was ill and remained in the east while Bouquet supplied the boots on the ground leadership. The British Army marched west to take Fort Duquesne at the forks of the Ohio from the French. The British Army engaged the French and Indians around Fort Ligonier in November 1758, and the French assumed that the British would outnumber them in any engagement, so they abandoned Fort Duquesne and blew it up as they left. The British took possession of the site and proceeded to build Fort Pitt, and the British Army returned eastward after Fort Duquesne's capture, but Fort Bedford continued to be garrisoned by British troops for the defense of the large number of families who were moving into the region as settlers. Fort Bedford saw duty again between 1763 and 1766 when Pontiac's rebellion broke out of the Ohio Valley. By the fall of 1766, though, the British Army had evacuated Fort Bedford. And finally, before it deteriorated and faded into the dust of memory, in the 1770s, the fort served as a defensive structure for the Bedford County militia during the American Revolutionary War. The terms of the proprietary grant to William Penn bestowed to the Penn family 10% of the lands received through treaties with the Amerindians. The various tracts surveyed to the Penns were called manors. In 1761, the proprietary manor of Bedford was established by the Penn family. The manor, no doubt, had been named for Fort Bedford, around which the manor was laid. 5 years later, in 1766, the town of Bedford was founded. That was right at the end of Pontiac's rebellion, and for a while, life was relatively peaceful in these hills and valleys. 5 years after that, when the new county was erected, the name Bedford seemed the logical choice. At the time, many settlers had already taken up lands in this region. The townships of Ayr, Barry, Bedford, Coleraine, Cumberland, and Dublin had been formed within Cumberland County. Ayr in 1754 and the rest in 1767. Although the act erecting Bedford County was signed on the 9th of March, the residents of those townships would not have known that their new county had been created until perhaps the 16th of March. It is also possible that they might not have known until as late as the 25th. The act was passed in Philadelphia, and a rider would certainly not have arrived in Bedford within just a few days. It has been estimated that a man riding on horseback in the 1770s could average between 20 and 30 miles each day. Philadelphia is approximately 200 miles from Bedford. That means that in addition to taking time for resting, a rider would have taken between a week and 10 days to travel between the two locations if riding at a normal pace. There was no established schedule for the review and passing of acts by the Pennsylvania Provincial Assembly. Therefore, in the spring of 1771, the people inhabiting the hills and valleys of this part of Cumberland County would not have known, or perhaps even guessed, when the act erecting the new county would actually be passed. On the morning of 9 March 1771, the people of this region would not have been pacing nervously to find out if they resided in a new county. When the writer did finally arrive in Bedford town with the news, there were probably scenes of excitement among many of the inhabitants. Granted, not everyone always agrees with each other or with changes that affect their lives. As the month of March rolled along and more inhabitants became aware that their government would be close at hand, men who previously held positions in the Cumberland County government, such as justices of the peace or sheriffs, might have begun to gather in heated conversations. But for the common settler, being concerned with raising crops and keeping their families safe, life probably didn't change much at all. The taverns and inns were the public places in which people gathered to discuss the news of the day. Those taverns and inns throughout this region were probably full to overflowing with men hoping to have some continued or new role in the new county's government. 1 month after the county was created, the first court of general sessions of the peace and jail were held on 16th of April. It would be the first of a court held every 4 months thereafter. At that time, the basic functions of the court were handled not by judges, but by justices of the peace. Capital offenses would be adjudicated at courts of oyer and terminer by itinerant judges and not on any regular schedule. So on that Tuesday, the 16th of April, 6 justices of the peace, Robert Cluggage, Robert Hanna, William Lockery, William McConnell, George Wilson, and my ancestor William Proctor, met to consider their first business, the division of the new county into townships. As already noted, 6 of them already existed, having been formed within the region when it was still Cumberland County: Ayr, Bury, Bedford, Coleraine, Cumberland, and Dublin. The justices now formed Brothers Valley out of the region that lay just between Allegheny Mountain and the Laurel Mountain. In addition, they created 8 townships in the western part of the new county, which would become Westmoreland in 1773. Armstrong, Fairfield, Hempfield, Mount Pleasant, Pitt, Ross Shraver, Spring Hill, and Tyrone. One additional township, Tullalig, was formed in the northernmost part of the county, a region which would be annexed to Northumberland County in 1773 and eventually become Center County. From the point of the county's creation for many years to come, the justices of the peace, meeting in the courts of general court of sessions, decided who were trustworthy enough to be granted licenses to operate taverns and inns. They decided where roads should be cut. They granted guardians to children whose father had died. And they settled minor disputes between spouses and between neighbors. Apart from judging crimes such as murder or treason, the justices of the peace, who held the courts of general court of sessions, were the arbiters of the law. On the frontier, their decisions were the law until 1790, when Pennsylvania's Constitution was ratified and the current judicial system took effect. Thomas Smith was elected to serve the county as its first judge. Unfounded traditions claim that the early courts were held in the local taverns. That might make a good subject for a Norman Rockwell painting, but it is far from the truth. A number of sources note that a log courthouse served the local government until a more substantial one could be built of stone. There was no reason that the courts had to be held in the taverns if there was a courthouse in which it could take place. The people who even today like to tell fanciful stories about the courts being held in the local taverns suggest the courts were held here in the 1760s. They forget the fact that this region was still Cumberland County until 1771. So prior to that year, the courts were held where they should be, at Carlisle, not Bedford town. Between 1771 and 1774, the Court of Quarter Sessions met in a log courthouse on the northeast corner of the square. An adjacent log structure without doors or windows kept prisoners secure, with access only through a trap door in the roof. Between 1774 and 1829, the courts met in a stone courthouse on the northwest corner of the squares, where the Trinity Lutheran Church now stands. And from 1829 until this present day, the courts have met in this fine Greek Revival structure, and it bears the distinction of being the second oldest courthouse still in continuous use in the state of Pennsylvania. Only Perry County's courthouse is older, and it's only older by 1 year. Bedford County was created just in time to guide and guard the local inhabitants through the period of the American Revolutionary War. Fort Bedford, which had been standing for nearly 2 decades, and which had seen use in the Ford's expedition and then in Pontiac's rebellion, found purpose again. Records do not exist to prove it, but the officers of the Bedford County Militia probably used the old fort as their headquarters. And personal stories of many early settlers tell of them taking refuge in the fort when attack was threatened. Fort Bedford was not standing, though, in 1794 when George Washington, as President of the United States, fulfilled his duty as Commander-in-Chief by bringing the Federal Army westward to quell the Whiskey Rebellion. The town of Bedford, though, was growing and thriving, and during the following year, the town was incorporated into a borough. Despite the fact that that act of incorporation was invalidated 2 decades later and the town had to reincorporate in 1817, it continued to grow and attract trades and craftsmen. It wasn't only the town of Bedford that was growing. By 1838, a second town, Shellsburg, had incorporated as a borough. Between 1856 and 1895, 11 more towns had grown large enough to think about incorporating. In the 1750s and 60s, during the time that the Bedford was still standing and garrisoned by British troops, the businesses that were dotting the region were the ones that encouraged and enabled both transportation and settlement. Initially, it was the so-called Indian traders such as John Ray, Garrett Pendergrass, and James Dunning who exchanged manufactured goods for animal pelts. Then along the paths and trails that lay between the trading posts, taverns and inns sprang up. Taverns provided food and drink, while inns provided nourishment in addition to a place to rest overnight. Taverns and inns were also places where news was exchanged, since travelers from all over the region met together there. Taverns and inns provided the stepping-off point for new settlers who were unfamiliar with the region. Blacksmiths and certain other trades soon became necessary. Since travel by any means other than walking required a horse and perhaps a carriage or wagon, the trades that assisted horses in those conveyances, blacksmiths, saddlers, and wainwrights, found much business where trading posts and taverns were located. Blacksmiths were needed to repair broken iron implements or produce new ones. Blacksmiths also did farrier work at times. They were needed to make and replace shoes on horses' hooves. Saddlers were needed to make saddles, harnesses, and other leather articles used to control those horses. And wainwrights and wheelwrights were needed to make and repair wagons and wagon wheels. The third type of tradesmen who were greatly needed and therefore found ready employment in the frontier early on was the miller, who established and operated grist and sawmills. Bread has been referred to as a staff of life, meaning that it is a staple of the diet of many cultures. In the 1750s and 60s, bread was an essential part of the diet of the Euro-Americans who were coming to the frontier to establish their farmsteads. To produce bread, you must have flour, and it was the grist mills where the settlers got their grains ground into flour. For travelers who were simply passing through and had no intention of taking up residence, the taverns and blacksmiths were all they needed. But when travelers began to build homes to reside here permanently, they needed grist mills to provide them with that flour. The same mill wheels that were turned by the waters of this region's streams to grind grain into flour were utilized to drive the blades of the sawmills, cutting timber into planks needed to build houses. Many of the earliest settlers cut down trees with their felling axes and then trimmed the logs square with their broad axes in order to build cabins. But later settlers built wood frame structures from the planks produced at the sawmills. As the 1770s dawned, Euro-American settlers had become so numerous in the western townships of Cumberland County that the erection of a new county became necessary. A second wave of trades and craftsmen now found opportunities in the new county. That second wave of trades and craftsmen included bespoke work, or rather work performed when and as requested. Those trades included tailors, cabinet makers, shoemakers and cobblers, apothecaries and coopers, and so many others who provide all the niceties of life. The establishment of a county seat and all the bureaucracy that entails brought justices and judges, lawyers and tax collectors into the region. By the early 1800s, the residents had civilized the frontier to the extent that they felt safe and comfortable enough to build churches and schools. Churches of all denominations were constructed throughout the county. By the 1860s, each township was divided into numerous school districts, each of which was served by a school. And although most of those schools consisted of only a single room in which students of all ages were taught, at least there were enough schools to provide every child an education. And beyond the public schools, which provide education for 8 grades, schools of higher education, what we would today call junior and senior high schools, were located in many of the larger towns. The mid-1800s saw industry spring up almost every corner of the county, giving work to hundreds and thousands of the county's residents, many of whom were recent immigrants. The great numbers of families in the county, all of which had at least 1 horse and some of which had 2 or 3, needed large amounts of leather to manage those horses. The great demand for leather led to large tanneries being built and operated in nearly every township. The development of railroads for the purpose of carrying the mail and other freight throughout Bedford and her neighboring counties added a number of jobs for local residents. Every station at which the train stopped to discharge or take on mail provided the nucleus of a small village. Before settling around Pittsburgh, the iron industry took hold in the counties of southeast central Pennsylvania, with furnaces and forges being constructed where veins of iron ore and limestone were found. Bedford County was one of those places. In addition to jobs specific to the operation of the furnaces and forges, the iron industry gave employment to men in a number of auxiliary jobs. Woodsmen, known by the name of colliers, were needed to cut wood and control the burning of it into charcoal that was then used to heat the furnaces. Lime burners quarried natural limestone, burned it in specially built kilns, and then slaked it by the addition of water to prepare what was called flux. The flux would be used in the furnace to separate impurities from the molten iron. And of course there was the iron ore miners themselves who dug and transported the primary ingredient of the iron furnace. The coal industry was another of the 19th century industries that gave employment in Bedford County to many men. All of the coal mines in Bedford County were pits, meaning they were underground operations. In the middle of the 1800s, the pit mining operations did not use hydraulic jackhammers or other similar equipment. It was hard, literally back-breaking labor using picks and shovels. Although not true in all cases, many of the industries employed men of the same ethnic or national backgrounds. The coal mines were largely worked by the Welsh. The iron furnaces and forges employed many of the Irishmen who came to America fleeing the hardships occasioned by the potato famines. Men of other ethnic backgrounds were attracted to various other industries. The Germans and Swiss, who made up the majority of the population of Bedford County since its beginnings, tended to become farmers and industry itself. Throughout the decades and centuries, singular events punctuate the history of the county. President George Washington's stay at the Espy House, when he led the Federal Army to stop the Whiskey Rebellion, has already been mentioned. Another of those singular events occurred on the 16th of August, 1858, when Queen Victoria of Great Britain sent the first transatlantic telegram to the United States. The message was received by President James Buchanan while he was at the Bedford Springs Resort on one of his many visits to the mineral spa. During the years leading up to the American Civil War, a number of farmsteads in Bedford County became stations along the Underground Railroad, their owners assisting Americans of African descent fleeing slavery in the South. Hundreds of Bedford County men signed up to assist in holding the Union together. Later, hundreds of Bedford County men would sign up to try to hold the world together as 2 major wars ravaged Europe. Over the years, while farming continued as the county's foremost industry, transportation was a close second. As has been emphasized, the county had practically come into existence by the cutting of Forbes Road through the virgin forest to facilitate a military campaign. It provided a rudimentary path for the British Army and subsequently served as a ready-made road for the earliest settlers to come in and establish their farmsteads. The Raystown branch of the Juniata River had also provided limited transportation of the products of the coal and iron industries prior to the railroads. Those railroads, which had crisscrossed the county in the latter part of the 19th century and early 20th century, gave way to the more economical hauling of freight by tractor and trailer. As freight hauling relied more and more on paved roads and the railroad lines disappeared from the landscape, attention shifted to the construction of substantial roads that could handle heavy cargoes. The interstate highway leading to Pittsburgh and markets farther west in the form of the Pennsylvania Turnpike fulfilled the need for a road that could provide a durable service for high-speed transport. Construction of the turnpike across and through the mountains that defined the region gave work to many Bedford County residents and companies. Today, Bedford County contains no cities, although it is within 50 miles of 3 cities, Altoona and Johnstown, Pennsylvania, and Cumberland in Maryland. No large industries blacken the skies with their exhaust smoke. As in centuries past, the farmer continues to be the backbone of Bedford County and one of her most valuable assets. The county's tourism industry, which has its roots in the Lincoln Highway, thrives on Bedford County's fresh air and natural beauty. People come to Bedford County to take in the quaint charm and the historical heritage of the past 263 years. It's a good bet that they're not dissatisfied. Thank you. I would now like to ask Bedford County Commissioner Barry Dallara to come up and give a few remarks.
Bedford County today remains the gateway to the heartland of America, where our hospitality and our heritage welcome all who come here. We are truly blessed to live in Bedford County. Thank you all for being here today, and God bless Bedford County. Thank you.
And now at this time, I'd like to welcome Pennsylvania Representative Jesse Topper to give some remarks.
Thank you, Larry, and good still morning to everybody. It's a pleasure to be here. And thanks to, once again, a tremendous job by the Bedford County Historical Society, who so dedicates themselves to preserving our local history. And it means a great deal to this son of a history teacher, and I'm sure each one of you. We also have a citation to present. I'm not going to read it because it sounds very much like the Senate citation, but we'll present it on behalf of Representative Metzgar and myself to Larry and to the Historical Society. But as I thought about 250 years, anytime we celebrate longevity, a few words come to mind: endurance, patience, perseverance, certainly things that we've needed over this past year when there haven't been many reasons to celebrate.
And so this gives us an opportunity to do that. I think back of many of the struggles over those 250 years and how maybe some of the very debates we have this day on the role of government and the exchange of freedoms for personal safety and those kind of debates that occurred over the years, maybe things don't change all that much. But it's so wonderful that we have this place that we can celebrate in this time and continue hopefully for another 250 years and beyond. Thank you.
Now we're going to have a short skit by the Bedford Players, Why We Talk This Way.
We're going to spend the next couple minutes telling you about some of those interesting little phrases and words. Perhaps you have heard them before, and maybe you even still use some of them.
The title of our little talk is Why We Talk This Way. And our local historian and master of ceremonies, Larry Smith, has shared with us many times in the past about Bedford County treating many immigrants during those early years when our county was new. Immigrants came from England, and the Scotch-Irish and German settlers who arrived in the area had a profound effect on our language. The words used, the way we pronounce things, the unique way we use grammar was affected by the combination of these immigrants' native languages and their influence on the way they ultimately communicated with each other.
New neighbors soon understood that they should help rev up after the church social. When a German child asked for a dippy egg, his young friends began asking for the same. So everyone's language evolved.
Let us share some examples with you. The butter is all.
Translation, the butter is all gone. Derived from German, all can be used in a sentence and mean all gone. We're accustomed to being asked by newcomers, all what? When we say something is all.
Another example, oh, he comes to the store still.
Translation, oh, he comes to the store from time to time.
I need to get a hold of your brother.
I need to get hold of your brother.
Look out for that bush. It's all over jaggers. Watch you don't get jagged.
All right, tell us, what are jaggers? Thorned, of course, and to get jagged means you're going to get scratched.
Imagine how it must have been during that time when a Scotch-Irish neighbor called a bush a jagger plant. It became a jagger plant. The Scotch-Irish influence also gave us words like nebby, pop instead of soda, red up, and slippy instead of slippery. Have you heard anyone say something like this? She's always been kind of nebby.
Anybody know what's nebby? Nosy, of course. You've never used that word, I'm sure.
And here are some statements that are certain to need interpretation. You need to red up your room before you go fishing in the creek.
Red up means what? Clean up, and a creek is a creek, of course.
Oh, we have a new batch of peepees.
Now, this is not a Benny Hill joke, so what's a pee-pee? Good, right.
What for book is that?
What book is that?
You know, it wonders me how you can stand liver.
I wonder how you can stand to eat liver.
You shouldn't peace before supper.
What's peace? Snack, right.
And as for the word washed, did I say it right? No. Many of us have been known to say washed instead of washed. And as a second grader, I sure couldn't figure out why I missed it on a spelling test. Where's the R?
The German influence gives us the words such as berm, meaning the side of a road, dippy, gumban, a favorite of my father's, and hat. Anybody know what a hat is? Well, a little more than a coverlet even. It's a big, heavy, homemade blanket. And my great-great-great-grandmother had one, and we inherited it.
I need a gum band to put over this pile of papers.
She needs a what?
Rubber band.
Rubber band. To put over a pile of papers? Pile of papers.
Did you hear that? Pile instead of pile.
and here's why. Another distinctive pronunciation occurs when vowels in our words merge, making the word shorter, like in the word tile, pile, and iron.
Towel, pal, iron. I'm going to a Stiller game and I'm going to take my terrible towel.
Where's she going? Steeler game, not a Stiller, not Ben Stiller.
You know, we even have a unique way to say the name of our county seat. She goes to Bedford a lot anymore.
A lot of people don't even use both D's. Likely the Scot-Irish word anymore can be used to mean nowadays. So the interpretation is, she goes to Bedford a lot nowadays.
No wonder we have trouble with spelling.
Right.
And everybody's heard the words used for the plural of you. Yuns, you guys, yous, and y'all are all welcome.
All of you are welcome.
How often have you been at a local restaurant and the waitress said, "Are you guys ready to order yet?" And they're all women in the group. Either German or Scotch-Irish use of the word leave and let are reversed. This reversal makes some grammar authorities cringe. For example, leave her come along or let her come along? Should I say leave a message after the beep or let a message after the beep?
The geography of the area isolated the residents so that the language used in our county was had limited intrusion from outside the region. Travel was difficult, so our beautiful mountains insulated the area and helped our unique dialect to flourish.
We all acquired the speech of our families and our childhood friends, and their influence far outshadowed the influence of television, movies, or social media. Whether you say yuns or you guys, soda or pop, sneakers or tennis shoes, tractor trailer or 18-wheeler, we're giving clues to the listeners where we came from.
So it can be concluded that those who speak like some do here in Bedford County are not lazy or lax or unconcerned about speaking good English. They're merely speaking the way they heard language spoken all their lives. Our use of language has been influenced by immigration, geography, and pride in our community.
When we're in a situation when speaking correct English is vital to our success, like in a job interview, most of us will demonstrate what we learned in English class. But when hanging with friends or at a family reunion, we will probably drop back into using the language of our ancestors. You guys can count on that.
You know, whenever Mr. Smith did the recitation of our history, the common thread that seemed to carry through on all of it was that these were tough men and women. Tough men and women that they shirked safety in exchange for freedom. And they came here and they did this, and make no mistake about it, they did it on the business end of a musket. And it was dangerous. It was skirmish after battle, the whole way through. And you know, he said in sort of passing that at some point they felt safe enough to build a church. And then during the whole course of the thing, they decided that they were going to throw a tyrant off their backs and kick the king out of this country. And I think that that's not something that we should take lightly, and that's why it's so important what the Historical Society does here today by reminding us what our history is, because I tell you, if we forget, and I think in today's day and age, there's a movement to make sure that we forget, that we lose that history, we don't know who we are. Amen. And so I tell you, we do that at great peril if we forget who we are and where we came from. Thank you.
And now I want to introduce someone who you all have known over the last couple of years, and hopefully he continues to be as productive as he had been previous. Former Commissioner Josh Lang.
thank you, Larry, and it is truly a beautiful day to be here. And I often catch myself saying Bedford, so I appreciate the Bedford County players for what you're doing. And it's just great to be part of the 250th anniversary of Bedford County. And it's really hard to fathom. It's years and years of dedication and commitment to preserve our history. And as a society, we must continuously document, preserve, and work to letting others know what was done 250 years ago, as Larry has done, and beyond. Thank you for all the hard work to Bedford County Historical Society. And I know, Larry, you've been working on this for last year or so, and I can't thank you enough for all your work. And it is an exciting year to celebrate Bedford County's history beginning today with our grand opening ceremony. And I'm proud to have the opportunity to work with others to plan the parade later this year, which will be held on September 11th at 2 p.m. But as Larry mentioned, Bedford County has a long and rich history from the establishment on March 9th, 1771, our courthouse being the second oldest in continuous use, our beautiful 14 covered bridges, the history of George Washington and the Whiskey Rebellion, and so much more. We have so many historic landmarks throughout Bedford County, including the Espy House, Fort Bedford, the Everett Railroad and Station Museum, Old Bedford Village, the Anderson House, and so much more. And I'm just happy to live in Bedford County. We're full of history, a place that is truly a place where heritage, hospitality, and opportunities meet. Each day, history is made here in Bedford County, and throughout generations, men and women have served, blood has been shed, and we cannot thank them enough for their service and sacrifices. Because without them, Bedford County would be a much different place. Events such as the celebration of 250 years of Bedford County must always be in the forefront, and we must continue to educate our youth and entire community about Bedford County history. So once again, I thank the Bedford County Historical Society and those throughout the community for coming together this year to pay tribute to Bedford County's 250th years of history. And thank you to everyone who has worked to preserve, create, and promote Bedford County history for the last 250 years. I cannot wait to see what the next 250 years and great things in the future for Bedford County. And as a community, let's continue to make history in a positive way and do our part to preserve it. The biggest mistake would be not to share it with the next generation, the history of our past, present, and future. Thank you.
Now, at this time, I want to have a bit more of entertainment for you. The title is simply Bedford County, and on your brochure, you'll take notice to the words for it here so you can follow along. Don and Levi Kuster.
At any time, if you would like to join along and sing with us, we're going to sing the whole song all the way through, but then we're going to continue on with the chorus 3 times so that you can join in and sing along if you would like, but you can sing along anytime you would like.
Marching through the valley, Lord, freedom doesn't just happen. It must be continuously defended and have the support of the American people. As we celebrate March 9th, 1771, the 250th anniversary of Bedford County, we remember and honor those countless patriots from and since that era for stepping forward and putting their life, possessions, and liberty on the line for our country's freedom. During the month of May, there are more military-related observances than any other month. And so it is an appropriate time to celebrate and honor those men and women who are currently serving and those who have served. Otherwise, our ceremony would not be taking place today. One major way to show our appreciation and gratitude to those individuals, as well as love of country, is through our patriotism. Patriotism is a feeling that stems from the heart, from each and every one of us. Having said that, regarding American values, my comments today are not just applicable to the military, but include each and every American citizen. We need to revisit the beliefs and convictions of our American revolutionary ancestors as it relates to liberty and the history of our great nation. It appears that some terminology from the past has gotten lost over time. Major concepts that support patriotism, which needs to be magnified and carried out in our society. One of them being Americanism. It is reported that this view was established as early as 1921, 100 years ago, by the American Legion. It emphasized unity, strengthening communities, and building pride through individual obligation, while inspiring generations of young people to serve proudly in their communities. The meaning of such is best described by a Mr. Jeff Stouffer of the American Legion magazine. Quote, "True Americanism is an ideology that is continually nurtured within one's soul through individual daily actions, thoughts, and beliefs in what their responsibilities are to be. Blessed to live in one nation, under God, with liberty and justice for all." End of quote. The second topic that I would like to make reference to is Loyalty Day. Loyalty Day, which happens to be May 1st, that's today, is greatly supported by the veterans of foreign war. In 1958, 63 years ago, Congress actually proclaimed Liberty Day for it to be a permanent fixture on the nation's calendar. Sadly, you might be hard-pressed to find a modern-day calendar indicating such. Loyalty Day serves as that specific occasion when all American citizens should publicly reaffirm their complete loyalty to America. This is the glue factor that bonds people together to act for the common good and while maintaining the principles of unity. Just like we learned in the military, we must always remember that as Americans, there is more that holds us all together than separates us. The ideals and concepts of our forefathers have long endured and have united us into the strongest and the greatest country in the world. But at times, we need a continuous reminder and daily performance of patriotism. if we are to continue to endure as a free people, not just with words, but with our actions. We have the capability to touch the hearts of the next generation, which includes our children and our children's children. It is not someone else's job to do it. It is our responsibility to do so if freedom in our great country is to continue. And perhaps if we carry out our individual responsibilities, there might be a Bedford County 300th anniversary celebration. Thank you.
And now, I'd like to ask Judge Thomas S. Lang to come and speak to us.
My name is Thomas Lang. I currently serve as a senior judge here for Bedford County. I've always been proud to have been born and raised in Bedford County. Of course, the natural beauty of our mountains, valleys, streams, and woodlands speak for themselves. It's always been an honor to grow up in these beautiful surroundings. But as much pleasure as I take in those wonders of nature, I've always been more impressed with the commitment of the people of the county to those first principles, the self-evident truths of a free people. So as I was saying, historical examples of this commitment are not rare. The number of quotes I'm going to give you today come from lawyers and judges. I suppose that's because we lawyers and judges tend to talk a lot. In 1774, 3 years after this county was established, Attorney James Wilson, a member of the Bedford County Bar and a future member of the first United States Supreme Court, wrote the following pamphlet. He said that all men are by nature equal and free. No one has a right to any authority without his consent. All lawful government is founded on the consent of those who are subject to it. Of course, in 1776, Thomas Jefferson gave his own immortal summary of this truth in the Declaration of Independence. All are created equal. Government derives its just powers from the consent of the people. This is a truth, as Lincoln noted, is an axiom for a free society, an abstract truth applicable to all men at all times. In 1807, our fifth president judge, Jonathan Hoag Walker, in his charge to the grand jury, told them that at present the people were clothed in the robes of sovereignty, but must always exercise constant vigilance to maintain their rights and privileges under the Constitution. In 1856, our eighth president, Judge Jeremiah Sullivan Black, gave his address on religious liberty, where he stated, "The right to live unmolested is not a political privilege, but a natural, absolute, and indefeasible right, which human government may protect, but can neither give nor withhold." Commitment to the rule of law, respect for the rights of others, the duties of citizenship. I learned these at home and in school, but I also learned them from the guy that ran the general store, the postmaster, my scoutmaster, and my Sunday school teacher. Almost every adult I came in contact when I was growing up supported these ideas of individual liberty and freedom. Of course, as the many monuments that stand around our town square show, love of country is a common emotion here in Bedford County. Bedford County's 13th President, Judge William McClay Hall, spoke in the 1870s on what was then known as Decoration Day, what we now know as Memorial Day. He noted that at times, love of country rises over all other duties, and the citizen must go to war. My own later experiences in the county confirm our people's fidelity to these great truths. In my 18 years as a lawyer and 20 years as a commissioned judge, examples were very common. Conscientious jurors, people committed to the free and fair election of officials, dedication by the ordinary citizens of due process of law. So while I'm the first to concede the imperfection of all people, the fidelity of the people of Bedford County to the great experiment we call the United States of America is not to be doubted, and to me is a source of great pride. So in closing, I'll simply say, happy birthday, Bedford County. Thank you.
Now, once again, I'd like to invite the flute quartet to come up and give us a song, Your Grand Old Flag. Again, remind you, if you haven't already, check out the website, bedford250.com. There's not only a number of different articles on there in regard to people, places, events in the past, but there is a calendar of events. You can see other events that are happening throughout this year. I'm going to ask Pastor Martin Wickens to come up and give us a few words and bless the event. And as soon as he is done, then there will be a musket salute at the rear given by Terry Tallion and Roy Phillips.
Thank you, Larry, and I'm very grateful to be a part of the gathering here today, and I especially appreciated the display from the Bedford County players, as where I'm from, a lot of those words and phrases are not familiar to me, so we are truly divided by a common language. But we do have much to be thankful for here today. We can give thanks to God for giving us this town to call home, and for the opportunity to be part of an amazing community. We can give thanks for the generations who have come before us and left such a rich heritage. Now, around the same time that that notation was made in the diary, there was the arrival of a certain Colonel Washington to the area, and that was something of historical note. As this diarist traveled through this region, he noted that they saw several acres of trees destroyed by caterpillars, There were road cutters that required protection from attacks. He noted there were sinkholes and springs. You know, in just a few pages of that diary, it speaks of so much that we can relate to. The mundane things of life. Famous leaders, natural disasters, battles that had to be fought and won, crimes that were committed and judgments that were handed down. There was progress to be made. For me, among all those records, the things that stand out are some of the sermons and the texts that were preached upon to the troops in the locality and to the people who made up the pioneers and settlers of the area. On September the 3rd, 1758, a sermon was preached nearby, and they took Nehemiah as the text. And there it read, "I looked and rose up and said unto the nobles and to the rulers and to the rest of the people, Be you not afraid, remember the Lord which is great and terrible, and fight for your brethren, your sons and your daughters, your wives and your houses." Many of those who heard that sermon that day, they could relate to Nehemiah. They would be the ones who later on would be building a nation, establishing a foundation on which their children and grandchildren and future generations could build. May we, like them, go through the mundane days, celebrate the victories, fight the battles that come to us. And in all of this, may we turn to the scriptures for our guide, trust in Christ for our Savior, and rely on God's word to steer us. Let's just go to the Lord now as we pray. Lord, we truly have a wonderful town and people, and we thank you for pouring out your blessings upon us. Through 250 years of pioneers and soldiers, farmers, men and women from numerous different backgrounds and from all kinds of nations, they've experienced your goodness here. And I thank you, Lord, for each one who's been a part of the heartbeat of this community. We thank you for this day, for this year of recognition of all that, of the celebration and the determination that we now have to protect our heritage and to continue to build a community for our children and those who will follow after us. We thank you for our police officers, firefighters, and paramedics, for those in our community who represent and serve the people in local government. We thank you for teachers and for all those who form this community and make what it is today. We ask for blessings on this day, for this year of anniversary and all its activities, and we ask for your continued grace to be shown to us as a town, a county, and upon this nation. In the name of our Savior, Jesus Christ, I pray. Amen.